Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 2022 West Virginia Cybersecurity and Game Developers Expo. We're here today with Bill Gardner, who's going to talk to us about demystifying zero trust. You might have heard about that earlier in Chris May's Spotlight, and now Professor Gardner is going to tell us all about that.
Well, I'm going to try to tell you all about it. This is kind of a new subject for me, and I've been spending a lot of time in it over the last few months. So I want to come up with sort of a outline or a presentation, sort of bring it down to a level everyone can understand. If you read the NIST documentation on zero trust, or even some of the other presentations about zero trust that are out there from vendors, it's a little complicated. So we're going to go down to the very bare bones in this presentation. I hope it's not too short, but I'll do my best to fill the entire time. So what is zero trust? Zero trust is a framework, not a product. If somebody's trying to sell you zero trust through an application, one application does not mean zero trust. It's again a framework, not a product. Although when you implement the framework, you may have to use products, but you should begin with the end in mind and build the framework first, and then find the products that apply to that framework. So it's a model focused on tailored controls, micro perimeters, and trusting nothing. None of this is really new. But zero trust sort of puts this in terms that we can all think about and understand. Um, it's not much different than building a mature security model or implementing a building a mature cybersecurity program, for example. Very, very similar things here. They're basically the same thing. So this is not some new handy dandy something that you need to learn about. We're going to take a lot of things that we know about and sort of put them in this ball that makes up zero trust. Founded by Forrester and first implemented by Google a few years ago. So there are organizations who are implementing zero trust. The federal government's kind of running around now trying to figure out how to implement zero trust because there's an executive order saying that they had to have to do it in the next few years. Um, and that's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Been around for a decade, but it's a hot topic now. And it became more important because of COVID-19 and remote work. So you're behind the firewall castle that you built with all your IT systems, all of a sudden spread out all across the nation, in some cases across the world. So we have to look at, instead of this sort of building castle walls model, we have to figure out how to make this dispersed and distributed network secure. Zero trust authentication, because we're going to talk about authentication, authenticating each user and each process does not need does not mean you need to induce more security friction. Uh, what you're trying to do is enable people to do their work in a secure way. You're not trying to keep them from doing their work. And properly implemented zero trust models should have no more security friction than the ones you have now. In fact, it could be less depending on how you implement it. And zero trust, basically at its core, means you remove trust from the network. You don't trust your network anymore. We need to build trust into your network um, through this zero trust framework. But the first thing you have to do is stop trusting your network. So when you remove trust from your network, you must instead gain confidence in your users, devices, and services. And you have to know your users, services, and devices. There's many organizations don't even know how many computers they have on a network, especially very large organizations. I talked to a organization not long ago that they didn't even know how many connections to the internet they had on their network. Um, and so, what devices are on your network? You have IoT devices. Are you using industrial control devices? Is this just people with computers and laptops? Does this include mobile phones and other smart devices, wearable computers, for example? So you have to know what those devices are. You have to know what services they're running on your network, and you have to know who your users are. Sounds kind of rudimentary, but many organizations have problems getting sort of rounding this up in the corral so they understand what they're looking at. But that's the first thing you have to do with zero trust. An identity can represent a user, a human, service, which is a software process, or a device. So an identity can represent a user, a service, or a device. And each should be uniquely identifiable and cryptographically verifiable in a zero trust. Both the user, the service, and the device has to constantly authenticate in order to use the processes, the data, to touch anything on the network. They're going to have to authenticate each time it goes to touch a service or touch data, for example. Now I think I messed up my slides. Okay, cryptographically verifiable. You have to implement a system that says that you have identity for all these things and that you can identify them through cryptography or through a mechanism where they all have their own unique hash or identifier. So that as these services are used and used by different users and devices on the network, you can identify what's going on the network cryptographically. So the first thing you should do is just complete a discovery exercise to figure out what's on your network. So this includes allocation of a single source of identity to use your users, services, and devices. Because you're going to use an overarching identity system that's going to give each one of these an identity so that it can be implemented into zero trust. Organizations should use a definitive user directory, creating accounts that are linked to individuals, for example. This can form a virtual directory or directory synchronization to give the appearance of a single user directory. Each identity should be assigned to a role, and this should be configured to be least privileged. So each identity, whatever it's a device or a process or a person, should be assigned a role so that they can only touch the resources on the network they need to touch in order to conduct business. Chris kind of talked about this earlier. What you're doing is in cybersecurity or information security or whatever you want to call it is that you're defending your organization's or your client's organization's ability to conduct business and make money. That's your basic role. It boils down to those two things. So the directory needs to be compatible with all services within the architecture, no matter where they're accessed from. So there is a single source of identity and sign-on for users. This allows for a better user experience, but also permits a single strong identity for all services. So a user identity could be used, should be able to create groups. So this is a user identity service, not a user identity. A user identity service should be able to create groups, define roles that have been configured to be least privileged, support strong and modern authentication methods such as multi-factor or passwordless authentication. Um, a user identity service should be able to securely provision credentials to a user, enable federated authentication to services, Manage user identities in external surfaces where applicable. The user identity service should be able to support your joiners, movers, and leavers. So when people come in to the organization, people leave the organization. Computers come in, or endpoints or devices come into the organization, and then they're retired from the organization. Processes come into the organization, and then at some point they may leave the organization. But your user identity service should be able to support joiners, movers, and leavers, and also support third-party federated ID, accepting identities from other trusted third-party user directories. Well, you're going to have to trust and verify in that case. That is sort of a weak point. If you don't have a mature zero trust model, make sure your model is up and working properly, and before you start accepting identities from other trusted third parties, would be my advice. In actuality, who knows how that will work? People build things so that they can work and make money. Sometimes in that rush to make things work, things do become um, insecure. In this case, when you start looking at other trusted third-party user directories, I think you need to be careful about who you're trusting. You need to do identification and classification. This is basic rudimentary stuff that we do anyway. Make sure you're doing it well. And this also is a part of zero trust. Identify all business critical data sources. Uh, create create and document a business impact assessment. So if you were to lose data or you lose processes, what's the impact on an organization's ability to make money, to exist, to do what they're supposed to be doing? Enable mapping of users, systems, applications, and roles, which should be well documented, and also well documented in the identity management system. And also document the flow and classification of your data. Who's using data? How does it flow? Um, and you can start looking for anomalies if there's some change in flow of data or classification of data. Um, so when mapping data flows, leverage data, roles, applications, systems, and data to map workflows, define roles and accesses, and authentication controls. It gives a clear picture into how data moves and is accessed. Again, so that once you document this, you can look for anomalies. Identity and access management implementation, that's the backbone of this whole thing. Um, Use mapping to create users, roles, access rights. Ensure the rights that the users have are the rights to the right data. You can use human resources management systems as a single source of truth. Does this person work here? Do they not work here? And enable multi-factor authentication. And really, multi-factor authentication is sort of standard at this point. Um, and we're all using it just to do the simplest things. Look at your bank account, look at your brokerage account, to log in to GitHub. Multi-factor authentication is now widely used, but it's also a tenet or sort of a foundational principle of zero trust. So the reason we authenticate identities and processes and pieces of hardware is threats come from the outside as well, from the inside as well as the outside. Does anyone remember Mr. Snowden? If the NSA were using zero trust at the time, he should have never been able to access the data that he was able to get, steal, and then leak, and then flee to Russia. I hope he's having a good time eating potatoes or whatever they do in Russia. Um, Never trust, always verify. You should verify at the time of assignment of the roles and verify again at the time of access. And I hope that wasn't too dry, and I hope that I answered some of your questions about what zero trust is. And look at that, I went 16 whole minutes. Are there any questions? So that's kind of like my kind of introduction to zero trust
Yeah.
because it's new to me too, and I was kind of thrown into a project. So I tried to boil down all these papers and stuff that I read into an outline, which then became this presentation. So, is there any? Let me check the comments.
Yeah, I was gonna double check too here and see.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll tell you what. What this kind of reminded me of is coming from like Windows NT domains.
Yeah.
You know, when Active Directory came out, and they went from don't trust anybody unless it's an explicit trust
Mm-hmm.
to everybody trusts everybody, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this is just a disaster, you
Right.
know. So I totally understand the idea of don't trust anyone and always verify. Um, but you know, when you were talking about that, that's what it reminded me of, going from in the other direction.
Right.
Um, so anyway, that just a weird comment that I had there from back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's you're absolutely right. And I was around for Windows 2000. NT was a little bit before my time. I was a Mac guy during MT, uh, running around administering Macintosh 7.1, 7.2 machines. But I think that in that case, it was designed in a certain way, but never used in the way it was designed. And a lot of that had to do with convenience. Um, Everyone's a local admin. Some cases, I've been in environments where everyone was domain admin. If they weren't, their software wouldn't run. And this is the software they are using to make money for the organization. So it's
Yeah,
can break the software. So yeah,
really lazy admins.
well, that's true. I was a lazy admin. In that, I wanted to get to what I needed to get to almost immediately instead of having to sign in to an administrative account. And then we always fought about the passwords because there were I was a main administrator and then I had people under me, and they're like, "Well, we need to know these."
Yeah,
And then when one of them left, you had to change them all, which would break things. So identity management systems allegedly fixes some of those problems. Instead of doing it manually, you can do it with a push of a button, depending on the vendor. And part of this is again just to point out that zero trust is a framework; it's not a product. So you really need to go out and look at the different products out there that allegedly do zero trust, and there are some interesting products out there. Sands had a zero trust summit recently that I attended, and you're right. Um, NIST SP 800-207 is a great paper to read for a deeper dive into zero trust. And everyone loves to read NIST papers, and I'm sure. So tried to take the best of that too, and make sure that I was putting it in a way that we could all talk about it. Um,
Yeah, they are very much page turners, I gotta tell you.
oh, if you can't sleep, pull out a NIST manual.
Yeah, well, we've got a student who's quickly been thrown into the hot water, and she was like, "I don't understand this," and I was like, "Don't feel bad. It's hard for IT professionals to read it and know what in the world's going on."
It's a mess, as far as that goes. And that's one of my problems with NIST is that you have to take what they write and then someone has to interpret it for you because it's all basically, the policy people. They're trying to write it in a way that it makes good policy. Implementing that policy is kind of the step that becomes a problem.
That's very, very true. So, well, I mean, I greatly appreciate you doing this because I had not actually looked into this particular area at all, and it does still seem like it's a bit emerging, especially because, like you mentioned, the start of COVID kind of really ignited this. So, I'm sure we're going to be seeing more and more and more about this. And actually, I don't know if you saw here, but Josh Brock had mentioned this.
Yeah,
That was where your comment came from. Okay, I didn't
right.
know. I was going to show it for people out there that,
Oh, that's good. You can throw it
yeah,
out there.
yeah.
Um, I would also mention that I have a conference coming up too. It's not just the the Technology Expo, which
Hmm.
I might try to actually attend this year. Um, Secure WV is coming up in October. It's in Charleston, West Virginia on
Hmm.
the 21st and 22nd. So keep an eye on that page. We have a call for papers, which is open. So if anyone wants to talk at Secure WV, we'd love to have you. Send in your proposal and we'll take a look at it.
SecureWV.com.
SecureWV.com.
Okay, I was going to pop that up here for people
Cool.
so they can go and see that. Yeah, more the merrier. Trying to make sure that everybody in the state can go to these needed networking opportunities and build a network and know where everybody else is, and so we don't feel as segmented. Which we were doing pretty good, and then COVID hit, and then now we all went remote and segmented again. So now it's time to kind of come back together and
We
pull our strength and
pledged
knowledge.
that this year would be an in-person conference. And so far, it looks like it's going to be wonderful. Last year year before last, we did a virtual conference. It was a heavy lift, and we were so tired that we just didn't have a secure W last year because we were just burnt out. And so now that we come back in person, we're looking forward to seeing everybody.
I wouldn't know what at all you mean about feeling burnout from setting up a conference. Wouldn't know that feeling at all, Bill.
Well, they made me president, so now what I can do is delegate everything. So it's a wonderful position to be in.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I vowed to have one, in April, like we are now. But when I was looking at setting it up, we were in mid-January, February, and Omicron was having spikes, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna feel really bad if I make this whole thing physical and then it all falls apart. I was like, I'll just be safe this time with knocking on as much wood as I can find around here that comes next year. We'll be able to be back here, we'll be able to have it in the classrooms, have different sessions, different tracks laid up, and have an exhibitors hall downstairs.
That'd be awesome.
I really miss having an exhibitors hall.
And we
So
won't have to hear the term the new normal again.
Yeah, I know what you're
yes,
saying.
yeah, that's my hope. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we greatly appreciate you coming on and talking about that. And I want to put back up there again for you one more time. You said we're looking at October. Did you say 20th and 21st?
I, I believe I can remember
Okay,
something for at least a second.
but yeah, we're
21st and 22nd. Sorry.
21st and
It's a
22nd. Well,
Friday and Saturday.
yeah, and for the future, this is the year 2022. So if you're
Wait a
seeing
minute.
this,
Wait a minute. I'll look.
well, if you're
Yeah, it
seeing,
is 2022. Good.
oh,
Okay.
okay. Well, I mean, if you're seeing this a year from now, they may not be having secure WV on those dates. So
No, but
go to the website and
go
look.
to website. It'll be up to date.
It will. It
Yeah.
will. So, well, it's always good to see you, sir. I know you and I and Scott have to touch base at some point. It's just I don't know if it's been crazy for you, but my goodness, it feels like around here anything that used to take an hour to do has now taken 5 hours to do.
Well,
So,
yeah, and it's getting crazy around here. We have a new president. I think he's wonderful.
yeah.
We just
We do too.
formed a center for cybersecurity, center of excellence for cybersecurity, which takes all the best of each one of the departments from different colleges and puts it under one roof, basically, so we can
Mhm.
apply for grants. We have a partnership with Cyber Command. We have partnerships with the National Guard. We do work with the Fusion Center. It's hard to sit and think about all the people we do work with, but
Mhm.
it's been extra busy this year.
I saw I think you retweeted a picture that was a bank of computers against the wall that your students were able to go ahead and work on real tickets and stuff for. I
Um,
believe it was the Cyber Command.
it's open source. Our open source intelligence lab.
Okay.
So we work with an organization called Operation Underground Railroad,
Mhm.
where we help them track down um, people who are being trafficked in foreign countries, and then they go in with the assistance of local law enforcement, bust these people and save people from being trafficked. So that's mainly what we do with the open source intelligence lab, but we also do stuff for um, the Fusion Center if they need something from us. They have their own open source things, but if the presidents come to the state of West Virginia and they need to look for threats or
Mhm.
there's something going on, we help law enforcement with those issues too.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good to hear about all the changes happening, and
Sounds like all good stuff.
Yeah, sounds great. So,
I appreciate the opportunity, you all. I hope to see
yeah.
you at Secure WV, and we should get together soon.
Yes, we should. Well, thank you so much, sir, and
Thanks, Bill.
we'll see you later.
See you later. Bye-bye.